lot to unpack today, so let's get to it. Good morning again, Daniel Valdez again. It's a pleasure and honor to talk to you. If you're listening on any sort of podcast app, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or you're watching on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/the Danpodcast. Appreciate your patronage. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate it tons. Make sure to follow the TexasBands.com Facebook page. If you're on Instagram, I am at Danpodvaldez. Please do all that stuff. Thank you so much for listening. A lot of stuff happened this week so far, and we need to talk about a little bit of a difficult subject. When do we make the call for pulling 2020 productions? When do we make the call for, I don't want to say the C word yet, but maybe that's a conversation we need to at least have in the back of our mind. So let's get to it. I actually wrote some stuff down this week. Isn't that great? All right. Major blows to the marching activity this week. The Virginia Marching Band Cooperative. You're like, what? That's basically an independent organization out in Virginia. That's like their de facto state marching contest. It's not as involved as UIL is. This is how involved UIL is. Our UIL state marching band champions are recognized by the Texas state government. That's how big of a deal it is. That's how involved UIL is. Over in Virginia, not so much, but that is their, that's their state marching band championship. The state of Virginia is already, not the state of Virginia, I should say, the organization that runs the Virginia State Marching Band Contest, they've canceled state contest. That's a big deal because that's the first postponement or cancellation of any marching event from any marching organization as far as we know. Is it possible others could follow? Yes. Is it possible this could be just a one-off thing? That's also possible, but with the way things are going, we should prepare ourselves. Another big thing, collegemarching.com reported that the American Athletic Conference, which includes schools like University of Houston and SMU, they've laid out restrictions and guidelines for the fall 2020 football season. Basically, no marching band is allowed on the field at any time, pregame, halftime, or postgame, and visiting bands are not allowed to travel. Yeah, marching bands are not allowed to travel to road games. So let's talk about that. That's the first set of guidelines and restrictions for the fall 2020 season that's come out. And even though it is college marching, that's still a massive deal. It's also a big deal because I think the budgetary concerns behind that decision are being vastly underplayed. It costs a lot of money to send a marching band across the country for a football game. The thing about this particular football conference is that there are multiple schools in multiple states, mainly on the east side, the East Coast, if you want to call it that, the east side of the United States. You have SMU in Houston here. The Naval Academy is part of the American Athletic Conference in football. The University of Cincinnati, there's all sorts of other schools that are there, but there's a lot of travel. It's not like you can just go down the street. You got to travel across state lines. And it costs a lot of money to send a marching band across the country for a football game. Even if you take half of the marching band, it's still a lot of money. You got to pay for hotels, you got to pay for flights. If you're going to do buses, you got to properly socially distance these things because of the situation we're in, which means you're probably going to need 2 or 3 times as many buses as you would originally need. It costs a lot of money. Universities they're already wise to the fact that they're probably not going to be able to have full stadiums this fall for football. Limited or no fans is a very likely possibility. Because of that, universities and colleges are not going to make as much money as they usually do on football because there's not going to be as many people in the stands. Because they're not making as much money, they're going to look for ways to cut costs as much as possible. Not having visiting marching bands is a very easy way to cut costs because remember, marching band travel that money comes from different places. It comes from the College of Fine Arts or their music college. It comes from the athletic department. It comes from It comes from multiple places. It comes from the college. It comes from their budget issued by the university admin. So, budgetary concerns. If colleges and universities with as much money as they have, if that's already a concern for them, what do you think it spells for, school districts in the state of Texas? Just something to think about. Bands of America released a very quick statement earlier this week stating that they plan on having a 2020 season. Still don't know what that's going to look like, which I understand, and we'll get to that in a second. As far as time limits go, usually your show is supposed to be from 6 minutes to 11 minutes. Now they've lowered that requirement. It's now from 5 minutes to 11 minutes. That's going to help out some programs, especially those programs that their districts impose an A or B option for schooling the fall season. Some districts are saying, okay, you can either go to school or you can do everything online. And that means, of course, 2 curriculums that need to be developed. And that's very taxing for teachers, especially for high school band directors. So there could be a possibility that, high school marching bands may not have as many students in their program because, their parents make the kids stay home, whether they're afraid of them getting sick or whatever the case may be. That option is there. So directors have to game plan for the possibility that there may not be as many students on the field just because, of the whole virus situation. And they still need to figure out, hey, if one of my students takes a virtual option, are they allowed to be in the marching band? Is that something? We're still working this stuff out. But nevertheless, I'm sure that announcement for lowering the show length requirements it'll help out some programs, I'm sure. Now let's talk about the nuclear football. What is the nuclear football? Nuclear football is a satchel that a military aide takes with a military aide takes this along with them whenever they're traveling with the president, and the president is able to open that up. And if there's like a nuclear strike that needs to be authorized, that can be done without being at a command center. And it's been around for decades. When do we release that for marching band? Now that could mean different things. It could mean districts doing handshake or elbow bump agreements saying, hey, we're all going to agree to kind of scrap our 2020 productions. And we're going to do something, that could look it could be a completely different program with completely new music, completely new drill, fewer props, whatever they can do to get the cost down. Or it could be a modified product of their 2020 production. Or it could be, hey, we're going nuclear with the whole thing, and we're just going to do a pep band show. We're going to go play Aztec Fire or the theme from Gladiator, and we're just going to do that at football games. And however many football games we're allowed to go to, we'll do it there. Districts are going to be the ones to make the call. I don't think you're going to see very many individual programs that are going to, I don't want to say going rogue because I don't look at it that way. I look at it more as I don't think you're going to see some programs that are going to step up and going for a full season without restrictions considering everything that's going on, is the best possible solution for my kids. That's the best experience. And directors are split on it. Some directors want answers now, and they just need to kind of game plan for the fall, and they would rather tell their kids now rather than later that the season is, whatever it is, their competitive season is going to look very different or could be eliminated completely. There's some directors that want to wait and see. What is BOA going to offer? What is UIL going to offer? Are they going to do virtual options, which US Bands is offering? I know I don't mention them here very often, but US Bands came up with a virtual option. You send in a video of your program and it gets evaluated, and they're going to do that in addition to live events in case programs aren't able to travel or for whatever reason. So when do you make the call? Do you wait and see? Do you get everything out of the way now so that everybody's on the same page, everybody in the district's on the same page? The kids know exactly what to expect of the season. The parents know exactly what to expect this season. The directors can start game planning for a virtual or in-person option. I mean, what do you do? There are no easy answers. None of this is easy. A nightmare situation for a band director in this state is that one of their kids gets sick. And not just asymptomatic sick, like, hey, I tested positive, I'm perfectly fine, but I'm going to go sit in a room for 14 days. I'm talking like somebody gets really sick and has to be admitted to the hospital. That's a nightmare situation for directors and staff. It's a nightmare situation for everybody. Nobody wants to go through that. We got to take into account travel. How many buses is it going to take just to get a marching band from their school to a football game? Two or three times as many buses if we're going to properly socially distance? Remember, you don't want to be the program. You don't want to be the program that has that photo posted over social media and shows up on the news of, 56 or 58 person capacity bus filled to the brim with marching band students. Nobody wants that photo out there because then there's a lot of explaining to do. And that's where things can get real dicey. Another thing about travel is the hotel situation. There are hotels in downtown San Antonio, as of today, that are closed and have been closed for 2 months. Because all the staffs have been furloughed. You go to some of these hotels in downtown San Antonio, there are barely any lights on. There are whole floors that are cut off, and they are working with minimal staff. And I mean minimal staff. So how is that going to change? I mean, the season's not that far away. Things could get better. Things could get worse. I mean, look at what happened over Memorial Day. Everybody got together on Memorial Day. And keep in mind, I work in an industry where I can kind of see these trends coming. Memorial Day happened, and then all of a sudden, a week or two later, the numbers that spiked terribly. It's not an accident. There's a lot of factors to consider here. There's a lot of stuff that has to be considered. And people just want answers. A lot of people are tired. A lot of people are stressed out. They're just tell me what we need to do. It's almost kind of like the baseball situation. The players were finally like, just tell us when to show up to work. Just tell us when to be there. I'll bring my glove. I'll bring my bat. I'll bring a hat. I'll bring sunscreen. Just make sure you have sanitizer and let's get this done. People are frustrated. People are tired. From everybody that I've talked to, from directors, parents, and marching members that I've talked to, everybody, the consensus is kind of, we're just mentally tired of everything. We're mentally tired of being inside. We're mentally tired of when to wear masks. We're mentally tired of seeing people not wear them. We're mentally tired of arguing with people on social media. We're mentally tired of our families. We're tired of everybody. Everybody's exhausted. And we just want answers for the season. And there are no easy answers, and there's still stuff to be worked out. I think that how you're involved in this activity kind of shapes how you're thinking about the fall 2020 season. Directors seem pretty split. Like, hey, we're going to try to wait and see. We're going to do everything we possibly can and exhaust all options to try to give my students the best possible experience. And I completely understand that. I get it. There's some directors that say, we need answers. We need to be able to figure this out. Because I need to be able to figure out how I'm going to teach my students this fall. And it can't be something that can just be made up. Because that didn't help me professionally, and it doesn't help my students either. As far as parents go, they're worried about the safety, and they're worried about the safety and health of their students. From the ones that I've talked to over the past couple of months, They want to compete. They want to go into the stands. They want to cheer their kids on. They want to go to practice, and they want to have as full a season as possible. But they also understand that it's becoming less and less likely that happens. Now, obviously, could things get better? Sure. Things could also get worse too, and because we don't know where this is really going, it's difficult to balance the optimism and the opposition. It's difficult to do that. I struggle with that with this activity every single day. So I'm with you there. And parents need to figure out what they need to do with their kids this season. Am I going to let them stay at home for a virtual option, or if I want them to be a part of the marching band, I'm going to have to send them to school if that's a mandate. Again, lots of that stuff needs to be worked out. Something we need to keep in mind, as far as the marching members go, and I've talked to a few of them within the past couple of weeks about virtual option or in person. Some of them have told us, my parents have already told me, hey, I have to go to school. You're going to school. We have to keep in mind that some kids don't get a say in whether they stay home or not. Remember, don't forget this stuff. We can't forget this stuff. Remember that some kids need that school lunch. We need to remember that some kids need to be at school. And my friend told me this the other day, and it's been sticking in my mind ever since. Some kids need to be at school because that is their sanctuary from a bad home situation. We need to be thinking about those people. So don't forget that. We can talk about marching band all day long and, are we going to have contests and all that stuff? We got to remember that it's about these marching members, the health, the well-being, and the mental health and well-being of them. From talking with marching members, they're kind of going with the flow. Like, hey, my director tells me he needs you got a Zoom assignment due here, you got something due on Smart Music, done. We got to do this, done. But at the same time, the marching members are kind of preparing for the worst here. If my director needs something to be done, I'll do it. But they kind of understand that the marching season's going to look very different. And I think we're getting more and more perspective of what that might actually look like. I think when the pandemic first hit, we were kind of like, okay, this kind of sucks, but we've got time. And we've got time, and things can get better, and, the season might look a little bit different. But I think we didn't understand at that time what that exactly meant. I mean, now we're kind of, okay, maybe there are no fans in the stands. Maybe we're not allowed to go to contests. Maybe we're only allowed to go to home football games. Maybe we're not even allowed on the field. Maybe we got to sit in the stands and be socially distanced and empty our valves into buckets. This is not fun for me to talk about. It's not. But these decisions are coming down soon. Something's got to be done. There's a lot of communication on the district level about what to do. You don't want, again, I'm pretty sure I said it earlier. I had it in my notes. I can't remember if I actually said it, but the district doesn't want to give off the perception that they're not unified. So you don't want one school to go off and say, hey, you know what, we're gonna go full force with our season, and there's nothing you can do about it, because then they're gonna get the resources. You don't want to make it look like one program's getting all the resources, and then the programs that decided to make safety the priority and say, you know what, maybe it's not worth it to risk it this season. You don't want them to fall by the wayside, or you don't want those programs to become second-class citizens or anything like that because they decided to go a different way with their season. This is all very difficult. It's scary to talk about. But we'll see how it goes. That's pretty much all I have today. This has not been a fun episode for me to talk about. Usually at this point we're talking about DCI stuff, but DCI didn't happen this year, so we're just trying to look forward. I know I'm trying to keep as much optimism up as possible. That's gotten me into a lot of trouble in my personal life. Not really, but I mean, I try to be as optimistic as I possibly can, almost to a detriment, to the point where it kind of clouds my judgment. But these conversations need to be had. We need to really sit down and come to terms with the fact that the season is in jeopardy. An audio, video, daily double jeopardy. Alex Trebek with the mustache. Jeopardy. And we need to do everything we possibly can to make sure that we have the marching members' backs no matter what happens. If we go full force with the season, or even if we go no fans, or we go no contest, or we need to have their backs. Because even though they are prepared, they feel like they're prepared, or they're preparing themselves for the worst, if that news hits, it's going to be devastating. And they're going to need virtual hugs. They're going to need virtual pats on the back. They're going to need Alamo Cafe queso. They're going to need everything possible to make sure that they know that they still have value in this world. To make sure that they are still important, they are still special, and that they are still loved. So help me out with that. I'm done here. I will talk to you next week, hopefully with better news, but with everything that's going on, we shall see. I'm done here. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, adios, and bye-bye.